When I first came across the leadership development field, I was working for Merck, the biggest pharmaceutical company in the world at that time, and we had a leadership behavior array of 83 behaviors. Nobody had sort of collapsed it down. And the big thing we did back then was get complex surveys and find out which behaviors you were sort of high in and which behaviors you were low in. And then primarily the task was fill in the gaps, find out the behaviors that were low and lift them up. Lift them up. You're really lousy at this. We've got to lift this one up. Here's you delegating. You're a lousy delegator. Let's lift this one up, you know. What about on inspiration? Yeah, that's bad. Let's lift you up here. So constantly trying to lift people up. But it was an array that was not dissimilar to this, just more complex and clunky, but really not that dissimilar. The trouble was that after decades of doing leadership development like that, what we discovered is that it wasn't really working. People weren't changing that much. People didn't really kind of grow in the way that we'd hoped. There were pockets of things happening, but in reality, when you took the approach of just trying to get your histogram column up on certain things you were kind of shit at, didn't really work. Just didn't really work. But it was a great start. It was a great start. Why didn't it work? Why didn't it work? It's because we didn't have the bottom half of the wheel to talk about. It's the bottom half of the wheel we really need to talk about. You see, this has been understood now for decades, but what I really want to share with you is in this model, we look at the bottom half of the wheel because it's really rich for understanding how to get up here. So what's on the bottom half of the wheel? Underneath this beautiful array of leadership competencies are our reactive tendencies, our patterns of thought and behavior that can be thought of as being reactive. And so underneath this line are the things we do. This is the first and easiest way to start to think about it. The things we do when we feel kind of stressed and anxious. When we're doing these things, we tend to be finding a way to deal with our own anxieties and stresses. There's 3 broad ways in which we are reactive, so that's a relief. There's not 15 of them, there's only 3. And we can identify ourselves across these. And if you can, you're going a very long way to assist you to be able to migrate from this part of the wheel up to here. Because as it turns out, if we want to occupy this space, if we want to be able to naturally and beautifully demonstrate these leadership competencies, only part of the game is about understanding them and focusing in on them. A big part of the game is actually unhooking from these. For most of us, actually, that's our primary thing. We need to know how to unhook from these reactive tendencies. There's no point trying to tell people that you must delegate more if they haven't unhooked from the need to control. And that's one of the reasons why when it comes to leadership, it must be from the inside out. You can't slap another technique on us and think that we're actually going to grow. Here's the 3-step template to delegate. I'd like you to do this. It's important to me because, and could you come back and tell me, it just doesn't get us there. Because for those of us who are into control, and I really fess up to this one, I know the pull of control, we're addicted to it. Some 3-step languaging template isn't going to get us there. It just doesn't. So now, why are we so connected here? Well, for the reasons that I was saying to you guys just a little bit earlier, which I'll just unfold a little more now. The bottom half of the wheel represents a level of adult development that we all get to, and it is a triumph to get here. It is a really great stage to get to. It's an achievement to get here. And many of us get here in our 20s. And in this context, it's called reactive, but other researchers have called it the socialized level. Robert Kegan's calls it the socialized level because it's where we learn how to take up membership in the adult world. I have 2 kids in their 20s, and they're largely here. They're largely here. And my younger kids are not yet. They're on the level earlier. But I've got 2 kids in my 20s. They're largely here. Now, here's the thing. They're most of the time actually my 24-year-old is actually pretty comfortable in his life because his life isn't too stressful yet and he hasn't got too many demands upon him. My 26-year-old though, she's actually feeling quite a lot of stress. She's at a similar level of development, but the complexity of her life is higher. She works in a really demanding job in a big research hospital. And so every day is full on dealing with the most extraordinary things in that hospital environment. The thing is, what's challenging for her is her life is drawing her into the next stage of adult development. How do we know we're being drawn on? When we feel the anxiety and stress from going to work every day, it's simply the environment saying, right now the environment is requiring this level of complexity of mind, but you're not quite matching it quite a bit of the time. And the gap between the complexity of mind required from your environment and the complexity of mind that you're operating on day to day, that gap, that's the definition of stress. That's where anxiety comes from. That is it. We think we can wipe away our anxiety by working longer hours, getting better, doing stuff slightly more efficiently, perfecting what we do, learning more. I'm going to get an MBA. That's going to clean it up. That's what I'll do, and I'm sure I'll be less stressed. I'm going to know more. Or I'm going to make my team sing and they're going to love me. All the things that we think we want to do to match this stress end up being something of a disappointment. They don't quite do it. Now, some of them might indirectly for the reasons we'll describe in a minute, but actually that gap is between our complexity of mind that we're working and living on day to day and the complexity of mind in the environment. And I know you guys, I understand your business, it's complex. I've actually never seen a more complex business than the one that you're in. And I know that many of you have studied for years to be in. I know the demands you're under, and I know the executive team and the challenges they're in. It would be surprising to me if you weren't experiencing this gap. So what do we do with this gap? We use it because that gap is telling us it's time to grow. It's drawing you into a growth. It's inviting you into an upgrade of your operating system. Sometimes I use this metaphor, but it's really an inappropriate metaphor for you because you've probably never even seen an MS-DOS display. But when I first started working, have you ever heard of MS-DOS? Some of you have, yeah? MS-DOS on the screen. This is like moving from MS-DOS to Windows, right? It's a massively different operating system. What is really difficult to do here and clunky becomes elegant and easier up here. And this is the upgrade that we really must engage in if we want to lift the complexity of mind, start to collapse some of the anxieties we're in, and live out of a greater sense of purpose and joy.